Behind the dazzling lights of Hollywood, Yul Brynner, the star with an irresistible charm, captivating smile, and piercing gaze, was not just a legendary actor but a man with deep, hidden secrets in his personal life, relationships few knew about, and love stories that stirred curiosity around the world. In rare interviews, he hinted at secret romances, complex connections that Hollywood had never seen. Were there famous figures, male actors he once dated, hidden behind the stage lights? Yul Brynner's story is not just about his illustrious career, but about the choices, secrets, and profound emotions he carried to the very end of his life. Join us as we uncover the untold secrets of a Hollywood legend. In 1920, in Vladivostok, a distant outpost of the Soviet Union, a baby's cry echoed into the cold air. He was named Yul Brynner. Even as a child, his very blood carried a strange fusion, a father of Mongolian roots and a Russian mother, gentle yet unyielding. But Yul's childhood was far from peaceful. In the aftermath of the revolution, his homeland descended into chaos, and his family fractured when his father walked away with another woman. That wound, carved into his young heart, left an emptiness that would never fully heal. At the age of 7, Yul crossed into Harbin, China, with his mother. In this foreign city, amid windswept streets and unfamiliar faces, the boy discovered a refuge in art. The strumming of guitars by wandering musicians stirred his soul. Each Russian folk song carried him back to memories of a homeland already slipping into the distance. At night, Yul would slip quietly into an old theater, sitting silently on worn wooden benches to watch Chekhov's plays unfold. In the shadows, his eyes glowed with dreams of one day standing beneath the stage lights, embraced by thunderous applause. For Yul, this was not only a dream of art, but a lifeline, a promise of escape from the weight of reality. Then, in 1933, war flared again. With little more than courage and hope, Yul and his mother boarded a train to Paris. Paris of the 1930s was dazzling and chaotic, a city both intoxicating and unforgiving. In the smoke-filled cafes of Russian émigrés, Yul was swept into a whirl of jazz, laughter, and restless ambition. And there, he stepped through the doorway into performance. He joined the Cirque d'Hiver, flying high on the trapeze, soaring through neon lights as drums thundered and the crowd roared below. Every leap, every swing was more than a spectacle, it was Yul's way of proving that from the shadows of his childhood, he could still rise toward the light. From those fragile beginnings, a star was quietly being born, shaped by both sorrow and unbreakable will. In 1937, at just 17 years old, a devastating accident changed Yul Brynner's life forever. In a split second, he lost his balance high above the circus floor, his body plunging down with a chilling thud that silenced the crowd. When he awoke in a hospital bed, his leg was in a cast, his back racked with unbearable pain. For nearly a year, 4 cold white walls became his entire world. Trapped in that stillness, Yul battled despair, often reaching for fleeting distractions to escape the weight of his suffering. Yet, within that darkness, a realization began to grow: he needed a true purpose, something greater to lift him beyond pain. That purpose was found in art. In Paris, he turned toward the stage. Starting with small roles, Yul slowly rebuilt himself, discovering in performance both healing and hope. Along this path, he experienced passionate romances, at times blissful, at times heartbreaking. But each love, each wound, carved deeper layers into his soul, shaping him into the artist he was meant to be. From a fallen boy beneath the circus lights, Yul Brynner rose again, step by step, until he stood tall on the grand stage, destined to become a legend of Hollywood. In 1958, beneath the dazzling lights of Beverly Hills, Yul Brynner and Paul Newman met for the first time at a party hosted by Joanne Woodward, Newman's wife. At that time, Yul was filming The Brothers Karamazov, while Newman had already become an enduring symbol of Hollywood masculinity. As the clinking of crystal glasses echoed through the room, their eyes locked, and a spark quietly ignited, setting the stage for a bond both passionate and complicated. In the years that followed, they would secretly meet at Newman's secluded farm in Connecticut. Surrounded by the scent of damp wood and fine wine, they spoke of acting, of roles that defined them, and of wounds that had never fully healed. Yet their closeness was not without consequences. The intimacy began to weigh heavily on Newman's marriage. Joanne sensed the distance, and though she tried to remain composed, her heart carried the burden of unspoken pain. Some nights, when Newman returned home, she would sit alone in the kitchen, clutching a glass of wine, her eyes clouded with sorrow. One evening, unable to contain her anguish, Joanne confronted him. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "You've lost me, haven't you?" Newman said nothing, his silence more powerful than words, and tears slid down Joanne's face, marking the quiet collapse of trust. Newman cared deeply for Yul, but the thought of his wife's suffering became unbearable. In the end, he chose to walk away without explanation, leaving Yul with regret and the realization that some of the most intense loves are also the ones we cannot hold on to. The chapter with Paul Newman closed like a deep wound, but for Yul Brynner, it was only the beginning of more complex relationships to come, where passion, love, and loss intertwined in a journey that would define his life. Marlon Brando, the immortal icon of The Godfather, was never afraid to speak about his private life. In a 1976 interview, he openly admitted that being candid about his feelings was no longer unusual. And in Hollywood, the story of Brando and Yul Brynner has lingered like a backstage legend. They first crossed paths on the set of Morituri in 1965. On screen, their gazes alone created powerful chemistry, but off-screen, their bond ran even deeper. Days of filming at sea became opportunities to connect. At night, in the Del Coronado Hotel, surrounded by cigarette smoke and wine, they debated politics, freedom, and the wounds of the soul. Brando once called Yul his soulmate, a rare title in his life. Yet, as with many intense connections, the fire burned too brightly to last. Yul's commanding nature often clashed with Brando's restless temperament, while Yul grew weary of Brando's disappearances and sudden returns with fleeting romances. The tension finally exploded in a heated argument on set. Brando hurled the script to the floor, while Yul walked outside, lit a cigarette, and never came back. From that day on, they no longer met each other's eyes. Conversations dwindled into cold nods. And when the film wrapped, their relationship ended too, like a ship departing in silence, with no horn, no light, leaving only the echo of days they once shared. After Marlon Brando had left a void in his heart, another figure stepped in, drawing Yul into a world both enchanting and perilous. That figure was Jean Cocteau, the celebrated French artist, a man of brilliance yet inner turmoil. They met through a mutual friend, in the bohemian circles of Paris where smoke, music, and endless conversations created a realm that felt suspended between dream and reality. To Cocteau, Yul was more than a young man, he was a muse. He opened doors for Yul into the upper echelons of the art world, introducing him to Pablo Picasso in his studio, where Cubist strokes were reshaping the future of painting. Nights at the Palais Royal saw them side by side, talking about art, about visions of what could be, and exchanging tender letters filled with longing. Together they wandered the French Riviera, where the sea breeze, the sunlit shores, and the fervor of youth seemed to promise eternity. Yet their love was not a fairy tale. Passion burned too fiercely, jealousy flared too easily, and their differences tore them apart. Joy was followed by sorrow, devotion by conflict, until separation became inevitable. Still, Yul carried the memory of Jean Cocteau for the rest of his life. It was both a scar and a gift, a chapter of love that left him marked forever. A love fragile, imperfect, but unforgettable, woven into the fabric of the man who would one day become a legend. Yul Brynner's loneliness deepened under the weight of a conservative society, where being true to oneself was often met with harsh judgment. Out of this struggle came a new chapter in his life, marked by one of his most significant relationships. That was with Herb Hatfield, the striking actor who would later become famous for his role in The Picture of Dorian Gray. Wilde's haunting story of a man destroyed by desire would eerily mirror the course of their own bond. The two first met in 1941 at Sardi's, the legendary Broadway restaurant where actors and dreamers gathered. At the time, both were students of the great acting teacher Michael Chekhov. Amid clinking glasses and lively conversations, their eyes met, and something unspoken bound them together. Their connection blossomed quietly, in the solitude of Hatfield's apartment in Greenwich Village. Surrounded by paintings on the walls and books stacked to the ceiling, they talked endlessly, not just about literature or the words of Wilde, but about the deeper longing to live authentically in a world that demanded masks. Hatfield became Yul's anchor, guiding him away from the darker shadows of his Paris years. Together they dreamed of Hollywood, of reaching the silver screen and carving a place in history. Yet it was that very dream that would divide them. As ambition grew, Herb chose the path of fame over love, leaving Yul with a heart scarred by loss. Still, from this heartbreak came resilience. The relationship, though fleeting, gave Yul a sharper fire, a courage to embrace bold choices and chase freedom on his own terms. In 1942, at the very beginning of his artistic journey, Yul Brynner asked photographer George Platt Lynes to capture a daring series of nude portraits in a Manhattan studio. Those photographs, which still exist today, stand as proof of his rebellious spirit and defiance of societal norms. But if betrayal in his past had left him with scars, another encounter would mark him with a haunting memory that lingered for life. In 1960, Paris was drenched in rain. At a small café in Saint-Germain-des-Prés, through a mutual friend, Yul met the Argentine writer Manuel Puig. The café was bathed in warm golden light, cigarette smoke curling into the mist outside, casting everything in a dreamlike haze. They sat across from each other, and in just a few hours, it felt as though they had entered another world. Their conversation flowed endlessly, about Latin American literature, about cinema, about the lives of those forgotten by society. Manuel was captivated by Yul's dark, deep eyes, gentle yet distant, as though hiding 1,000 untold stories. And every fleeting smile from Yul felt like the opening to a dazzling world Manuel knew he could never truly enter. When dawn came, Yul left with the sound of distant thunder, leaving Manuel alone beneath the dimming café lights. Years later, Puig would write in his memoir, "Yul was like a piece of music so achingly beautiful, it played only once and then vanished forever." Their connection was brief, but the echo never faded. To Manuel, Yul remained a shadowy figure, carrying the scent of tobacco and the weight of unfinished stories. And for Yul, it was a memory locked away, a past only revisited when time had softened its edges. Why did Yul Brynner wait so long before revealing these truths about his life? The answer lies in the Hollywood of the 1950s and 1960s, a world built on glamour but ruled by silence. In those days, even the faintest rumor, a single misunderstood photograph, or whispered gossip backstage could be enough to destroy a star overnight. The studios held absolute power, controlling contracts, images, and careers. They were quick to bury anyone who didn't fit the ideal of the perfect family man they sold to the public. Behind the dazzling lights were restrictive contracts, carefully staged photo sessions, and silent agreements designed to protect appearances at all costs. Beyond the studios, Yul also lived under the shadow of politics. It was the era of Joseph McCarthy and the notorious witch hunts that swept through America from the late 1940s. What began as an anti-communist campaign soon turned into a purge against anyone deemed different. Alongside it ran another, lesser-known movement called the Lavender Scare, which drove thousands from their jobs under suspicion alone. Hollywood, during this time, was a theater of fear. The House Un-American Activities Committee summoned actors, directors, and writers to testify, and many who refused, or were even rumored, were cast onto the blacklist, a silent sentence that ended careers without a trial. In that suffocating atmosphere, even a baseless whisper could become a weapon. Yul Brynner understood this all too well. To protect his career, he built a flawless public image, strong, masculine, untouchable. Silence became his shield. He carried part of himself as though it were a state secret, hidden for decades to keep the spotlight from dimming. Only later, when society began to shift, when prejudice softened ever so slightly, could Yul look back and embrace his truth. Yet, even with all his careful steps, not everything in his life followed the script he had hoped for. A legendary career was not built only under the spotlight, but also shaped by unexpected turns of fate. When World War II broke out in 1939, Europe was engulfed in fire and chaos. Yul Brynner and his mother were forced to leave everything behind, returning to China in search of help from the father who had abandoned them. But instead of a warm reunion, Yul faced an astonishing twist. Standing beside his father was Katerina Kornova, once his father's lover, now his stepmother. Katerina was a striking actress with the elegance of Russian classical theater. She had trained under Michael Chekhov, the master who inspired legends like Marilyn Monroe and Clint Eastwood, and who carried forward the essence of the Stanislavski method, a school that emphasized the power of inner emotions. In Katerina's hands, Yul was like clay waiting to be shaped. She taught him how to let his voice resound like brass horns in a grand theater, how to move with the commanding force of a warrior. She encouraged him to blend the improvisational freedom of a street performer with body language that was both alluring and authoritative, punctuated by surprising acrobatic gestures. From this guidance, a unique style of performance was born, a fusion of classical theater and modern freedom, a foundation that would carry Yul Brynner into the world of art and eventually to the pinnacle of Hollywood fame. Thanks to the foundation he had built in Europe, by the late 1940s Yul Brynner set sail for America, carrying with him a precious letter of introduction from Michael Chekhov. That letter was his passport to the land of dreams, Hollywood. His early days in the United States began in New York, where the dazzling lights of Broadway and the rhythm of lively clubs like the Copacabana became his stage. In the smoky haze, with saxophones echoing in the air, Yul sang with passion, until fate led him to a woman who would forever change his life. In 1941, he met Marlene Dietrich, the German screen legend whose smoky voice and magnetic presence silenced entire rooms. Though she was much older, she and Yul embarked on a romance that burned for 10 years, illuminated by nights in luxurious hotels such as the Waldorf Astoria. For Yul, Dietrich was more than a lover, she was a mentor. She taught him how to face the mirror, to find the angles that best captured his essence, to use makeup and lighting to his advantage, and, most importantly, how to survive in the ruthless world of show business. Dietrich showed him how to spark small scandals to keep his name in the tabloids, negotiate with the Hollywood moguls, and guard his mystique by avoiding intimate interviews. Yet behind the glamorous surface, Yul also began a more personal journey of self-discovery, exploring hidden sides of his identity and desires. The defining moment of his career came in 1951 when he stepped into the role of King Mongkut in The King and I. With his gleaming bald head, so unorthodox in the Hollywood of that era, his resonant voice, commanding presence, and subtle humor, Yul transformed the role into a cultural phenomenon. The performance earned him a Tony Award in 1952 and later, the crowning glory, an Oscar for Best Actor in 1957 with the film adaptation. He would go on to play the king more than 4,600 times, a record unmatched in stage history. That same year, he astonished audiences once again as Pharaoh Ramses II in Cecil B. DeMille's epic The Ten Commandments. Dressed in golden armor, with a piercing gaze, Yul embodied a pharaoh both majestic and merciless, cementing his image as the mysterious and powerful Eastern ruler in the eyes of generations. Yet beyond the lights of Broadway and Hollywood, his personal life was no less dramatic. Yul married 4 times, fathered 5 children, and left behind a life as complex, layered, and unforgettable as the characters he brought to the screen. Beyond the glittering lights of Hollywood, Yul Brynner carried within him a deep compassion for humanity. He served as a goodwill ambassador for the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, devoting his efforts to help refugees from Vietnam and many other countries find safety and hope. Yet, his own life came to a close in 1985, at the age of 65, after a battle with lung cancer. Before leaving this world, Yul recorded a powerful anti-smoking message, a lasting reminder for future generations. Behind the immortal image of the King of Siam in The King and I, behind the iconic bald head and legendary performances, Yul Brynner was a man caught between brilliance and burden, shaped by a time that often left little room for personal truth. He lived in an era where private secrets could destroy an entire career. The weight of silence, hidden relationships, and unspoken sacrifices carved scars that only he and his family carried. Yet, it was precisely that quiet courage, the willingness to be true, to love, and to confront prejudice, that transformed Yul into a timeless figure. He proved that even a soul marked by hidden struggles can still shine brilliantly, leaving behind a legacy not only of art but of bravery and authenticity. And perhaps, that is why Yul Brynner remains eternal in the hearts of those who remember him. The legacy Yul Brynner left behind was not only in his iconic performances or the unforgettable style that became his signature. He was also a compassionate humanitarian, dedicating his time and influence to those who had lost everything, to refugees searching for hope and safety. His life was a journey of contrasts, where dazzling fame existed alongside hidden struggles and untold pain. It stands as a powerful reminder that even when the world is not ready to accept the truth, one can still choose to live authentically. If this story lingers in your heart, I invite you to share your thoughts below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so we can continue exploring more journeys together, where light and shadow intertwine, where legends are not only built from thunderous applause but also from silent sorrows, unseen battles, and the courage to endure them. And perhaps, some secrets will forever remain untold, belonging only to those who once carried them.